Hello everyone and welcome to SUGTalks. I'm Craig Dale, your host, and together with our special guest we'll take a deep dive into the topics, challenges and opportunities facing SAP users today. Please make sure you do subscribe so you don't miss any of our future episodes. I'm delighted to be joined once again today by Sandeep Seeripat, Global Business Transformation and Technology Officer at Twinings. So welcome again, Sandeep.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's really great to have you actually because, following on to our previous conversation, today we're going to be discussing the questions we weren't able to get to during your keynote session at UKISUG Connect at the end of 2025. And from that, if I reflect on our previous discussion as well, your teacher saying you would never public speak, how wrong they were. And you said you can, and you did. And thank you on behalf of all of the UKISUG community for coming along and sharing those insights with us.
No, it was an absolute pleasure. And again, it was nervous in many forms, but being able to stand in front of them and to share our journey, and hopefully people got some lessons learned out of that, gave me the courage. So I'm very grateful for you guys inviting me.
Oh, fantastic. Well, it was a delight to have you. And just reflecting now on kind of the questions that came in from the audience that we weren't able to get to. One of the main questions we got was, with multiple teams and partners, how did you drive a one program mentality to achieve your outcomes, and how did you drive collaboration?
So again, for me, it starts up with why we're doing it. And again, being aligned with all of my partners that this isn't just about go live. Go live is just an outcome. It's about how do we go live and how quickly can we get back to full production was one dimension. The other dimension was with my team around, we had a unique moment in the history of our organization, which is to try to do something this big and this complex across the entire globe, which we've never done before. So this was the first for us. And to be able to work on a program where you're creating a legacy, and the legacy is actually going to be able to drive this organization further, was again quite an important why. And then ultimately to be able to know that for us it's about our consumer. Whatever we do is around, if we're not delighting our consumer in that journey, then why we're doing it. And then to get everybody in the organization to keep believing in that. And we're asking ourselves a question over and over again around why you're doing it, how is it going to help the consumer, how is it going to help your peers, how is it going to help your colleagues. In each of those points, being single-minded about it. And then comes the actual behaviors. So it's very easy to kind of, these things roll off the tongue. But when you start sitting in a meeting and there's a problem, and very quickly you go, it's vendor A's problem and it's vendor B's problem. It's human nature to kind of put a wall up and say, right, okay, I'm now in defense mode. Versus, team, we have a problem. What's the problem? How are we going to deal with it? And again, it sounds simple in its verbalization of it. But being able to live that and then to get every member of my leadership team, including all of the stakeholders, to believe that and to act in that manner, that was the hard part. But very quickly, everybody saw the value of that. Because we've all been in programs and in projects and stuff like that, where we just take the stick out and we beat everybody up. And all that happens is you have very bloody noses. And for me, what I wanted to drive was not that. I knew that was going to be a potential outcome. It was very clear on, I wanted to drive an organization that was clear about why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and what's the behaviors we're going to do. And then it starts from the top. It's very quickly for me to have sat in a meeting and be able to blame everybody, walk out of there and tell people, right, you all got to believe in one team. And they all look to you, but hold on, you didn't do that. So I think as a leader, you're always on show because people are looking to you around how are you behaving, and that's the behavior we want to set in the team. So for me, that's what drove that single culture. And then people very quickly, when you see success behind that, know that is doing something.
Thank you. And from that, what are your top tips for embedding transformation in the business and preventing projects just being seen as technology change?
I have to admit we're still on the journey on the embedding. So we've got this concept of 3 A's, which is adopt, adapt, and accelerate. So the idea behind that is adopt the solution that we've got, right? So don't change anything. And again, we're one of these organizations where we said we just want to take SAP standard and use it, and we've largely done that. So that was It's the first A. The second A is you need to change your processes. We are not going to change the system for every single business unit we've got. So customizations down to an absolute minimum. In fact, we've got 3 major customizations or 2 major customizations in the entire system. So we try to keep the core clean was quite a key philosophy that we were trying to drive. And the last piece of that A is around how do you accelerate value? And we're on the journey. So we're not there yet. We're putting processes in place and systems in place and the right structures in place to help drive that, but we're not there yet. We are seeing green shoots, so we're already seeing value that we said that we got a business case, we need to deliver against a business case. Those green shoots are already being developed, but we're still on a journey.
Thank you. I think you've touched on a number of these areas previously in your answer, but what prep work is most important before embarking on a transformation of the scale you undertook?
It's getting your stakeholders on the same page as you. Because when you start this and 2 people, you have a vision and your stakeholders have a different vision, and you're driving 2 different agendas, you are heading for disaster. So being aligned, whatever that alignment is, whether you're doing a brownfield implementation, bluefield implementation, greenfield, whatever that is, aligning that up front is really, really critical. First point. The second point is getting stakeholder and your senior leadership, whether it's your CEO, your CFO, your project sponsors, getting them aligned to why you're doing this. Because again, when things go wrong, and they will go wrong, who do you go to? Who has veto rights? So being able to understand all of those dynamics around, well, do I have buy-in at the highest level, and managing that to say, listen, things are going to go wrong, or we're going to succeed, and we're going to do these things, or when we need to make decisions. And I use the term, who has the veto right? There'll be times where there's that constant challenge between quality, time, and cost. And being able to balance that all the time, somebody needs to be the mediator in that, and how and who is that person? The other side of the equation around making sure that you have the right partner through that journey. Because it's very easy to get somebody at the lowest cost or somebody who just wants to kind of tick the box. But to get people who actually buy into why you're doing it and how you're doing it is really important. And at one stage, we had about 30 different vendors on the program. And to get them to kind of operate in a single-minded perspective was hard. But if I didn't invest the time to get them on the same page and get them to believe in that story, is quite difficult. So I think if anybody's starting out these programs, making sure that your senior stakeholders in the organization, the decision makers, understand why you're doing it, understand their role inside that journey, because it's very easy to stand on the sideline and throw stones that it doesn't work, versus you part of the team. And in my program, I was really, really lucky to have my CEO, my CFO, the ops leaders, the general managers from the business units, all part of my steercom, which made the steercom complex in terms of running. But what it was, they were part of the journey. So we use this concept around make the boat go faster. And the view was you're either on the boat or you're off the boat. And so anybody who is trying to drive this program, you're on the boat, whoever you are in the organization. And that philosophy made sure that when we had issues or when we were making decisions, that the timeliness of that was actually quite good because people knew why we were doing it.
Thank you. I like that, quite early on in your answer there, you that one vision, everybody's aligned to that vision. You've talked before about one team, and we have one vision, and now I've got Freddie Mercury going around in my head. I'm really sorry for that. It was Michael Jackson in our last conversation, but anyway, moving swiftly on back on to more sensible things. What was the most difficult challenge in your transformation journey, and how did you overcome it?
There have been a number of challenges, and I think the first challenge is yourself, right? Because you're embarking on something that is challenging, that a lot of people are looking up to you to get this work. So how do you prepare yourself for that journey? And I don't think you ever get it out of it. There's a concept that I've been talking about, which is the transformation trap, is that you perform and perform at the risk of not transforming yourself, right? Because as leaders, all we do is we want to get to the next outcome. But if you take a pause moment and say, well, how am I getting there, is quite important. So being able to understand what is the role of performing and what's the role of leading. Because these programs, again, come back about leading, right? We kind of forget it's the human behind it. The tech works. We all know that the tech works. It's worked for decades. So it's not a tech problem. it's how does the tech problem come to manifest itself in an organization that still is reliant on human beings? And so therefore, my starting point in that thing, when things go wrong, is look at yourself and how you're leading through that, and how you're leading yourself. First bucket. The second bucket is around being able to manage your stakeholders. There's lots of people on this journey that you need to manage, everything from your investors, your CEO, your CFOs, down to your team, to your vendors. Knowing that and investing the time to manage those individuals or engage with those individuals or lead those individuals is really, really important. So when I think about my toughest moments, at least I had people inside that body of people I just described that I could tap into and say, listen, here's a technical problem, or here's a business problem, or here's a change problem. And knowing that I had the opportunity without consequence. And I think one of the things that these programs all carry is this big kind of cloud over your head around saying, is my job going to be at risk? And I guess that's always a risk. But knowing that you have support and the belief that we're doing the right thing makes this conversation slightly easier. So again, the hard truths. So I think it's easy to kind of put up facades. And I remember one of my first meetings thinking, do I give them a harsh reality of where we are, or do I package it so that it sort of looks right, so the RAG status on my sheets look okay? And I made a decision very early up front, is that it's going to be hard conversations. We're going to have this hard conversation. We're going to have a reality check wherever we are, and we'll make decisions on that. And if the guys don't like the answer, then let's have an honest conversation about that. So I think a degree of honesty to yourself, and then to your team, and then to your stakeholders was the next key thing. And the last thing is around, you are reliant on partners. There's no ways you can do it by yourself. So whether it's your SI, whether it's SAP, whether it's other vendors, being able to ensure that they have a platform in which they can raise their concerns, to influence and to drive that change. Those are kind of the key lessons that I had.
Thank you. And you mentioned around the transformation about standard SAP, about adoption, about clean core. How did you manage the extensive business change to the business, if you like, in the context of adopt and not adapt?
So we make tea and Ovaltine. That's our business. So in itself, it's not a complex business. Why would we want to replicate some degree of complexity in the system that actually manages that? That was kind of, I was, again, CEO and CFO's conversation back in the front around saying, Sandeep, we need to keep this as simple as possible, right? We are not a complex business, so therefore the system should not reflect a degree of complexity. So again, very few organizations had that degree of clarity from the top to say, that's what we want to do. If I didn't have that, I can tell you it would be a really hard journey, because every decision would have been kind of fighting around somebody in supply chain wants something, or somebody in sales wants something, and there's this constant tension. But we knew that we wanted to keep it as simple. We wanted to get it in as quickly as possible, and we wanted to get to value. So keeping the core clean was a very simple principle in that regard, around saying, well, that's where we want to go. Do we believe in that? And it comes back to, again, what are you trying to do with this program? The other thing is that having the right governance and controls around, for me, we had a very, very strong kind of control and governance process where any change that they wanted needed to be justified with the business case. And if it wasn't going to be helping us make more, deliver more, sell more, and delight the consumer, then you're not getting it. So it wasn't about who screamed the loudest, because in a lot of these programs, and I've been involved in programs where there's just somebody who just wants to scream the loudest, and that's the one that we run after. In our program, it was around, we want to do the right thing. And those are hard when you got those sort of principles, when you got this constant challenge from people wanting more, people wanting done it their way. Last 30 years, I've done it like this, and now you're coming and telling me I can't. So, and I still, it's not like I've found the magic pill to solve all those problems, but to deal with those challenges and having a clear reason why we're doing it. And the benefit that I keep telling everybody why keeping the core clean was important is this is long before AI and stuff like that. So what I did know is that if my data was not at the right clean level, whether it was an upgrade, the reason I went with SAP and RISE is that I don't want to bring my business to a grinding halt every single time we do an upgrade. Right? I want to be able to make sure that I do a Word upgrade or Windows upgrade or any of these upgrades, I just want it to happen in the background, because that's not my competitive advantage. My competitive advantage is utilizing it as quickly as possible to drive the value. So knowing all of those things, for me, were actually key.
Thank you. And so going back to one of the things you mentioned earlier about alignment and alignment across the leadership team, the business, etc., and the key stakeholders. How did you manage to create a culture that focuses on innovation and growth within your leadership team?
Twinings as a company has been around for over 320 years. Kind of innovation is part of who we are. You don't survive being one of the oldest brands in the world without innovating, and Ovaltine has a very similar heritage. So we come from an organization where that's just part of our DNA. Now to utilize tech, and I think this is the cool thing about it, is that now tech now becomes the accelerator of those years of innovation, those years of being relevant, those years of delighting the consumer. That becomes the problem that we need to solve, not the tech problems around how does the tech start driving those things, which then made the conversations at the stakeholders easier. It's never easy, but it's easier. Where it becomes quite challenging is when you've got tension between a business unit that needs to sell and excite the consumer, but at the same time you've got a cutover, at the same time you've got you've got hypercare and so forth. So you're distracting the reason you exist as a business, which is we're here to make more, sell more, deliver more, and delight our consumer. These programs distract that. So the challenge for us was how do you reduce the distraction as much as possible? You can't eliminate it. How do you reduce it? And that was the journey. And again, some we got right and some we got wrong.
Thank you. And so with regards to delivering a transformation project successfully, what are your views on work from home versus work from the office?
Craig, you're choosing some really, really tough questions. For whoever asked those questions,
blame our attendees at the conference.
Exactly. Right. I'm torn with this, and I'm torn with this for a number of reasons. One is I've seen the value of people coming together to deliver, right? And we've seen that throughout the entire program. So if I had the ability to kind of get everybody to sit in the same room, would be fantastic. That was not possible. It was not possible because of geographic challenges that we had. Excuse me. It wasn't possible in terms of the scope, the geographic scope of the implementation itself. We had every implementation all the way from North America to China. So everybody in between to have an entire team on the ground is hard. Wherever we could, we had people co-locate, and we saw the value of that. So if I had to do this all over again, and if my finances could allow it, you probably want to co-locate people as much as you can. But I also think there's a degree of there's long hours. People work really long hours on these programs. How do you find the balance between, yes, I need you in the office, yes, I need you to be part of it, but also I need you to take care of yourself? And where does that balance come from? So I think that's why I say I'm torn, because the right thing is for these sort of programs is co-locate as much as you can, because there's a value in this energy. And it's amazing when we finished the program, a large part of the program, a lot of what we called local process owners felt they were on a high for a year or 2 years. They've been in constant high on delivering amazing outcomes. And suddenly it all comes to an end and you go back to your day job. And there's a sense around almost the oxygen's kind of taken out of the room. And so being able to kind of figure out how you deal with that. And I think we haven't done a really great job in some cases. But what we had done is, in terms of that co-locating, there's an energy that gets created. And how do you utilize post-go live to keep that energy going is the thing that we're trying to do at the moment.
Thank you. And so we talked about the people there and where they are, how they collaborate, how they work together. What role does methodology play in ensuring both the business and technical alignment in large transformation programs work successfully?
I think at the keynote I raised one of our magic ingredients that we had was the methodology. And the methodology is important. You can have all the best ingredients in the world, and again, I use that story around when you have a perfect cup of tea, you can have the best ingredients, but if they don't come together as the master blender making that perfect blend, you have a problem. And to me, the methodology is that's the recipe. And for us, the methodology is absolutely critical. So we took a version of Activate and we converted it to what made sense for us. And having then the governance to be able to, because again, great methodology without governance is a waste of time. So having the right tension. And I remember somebody telling me, the role of governance, the role of the PMO is to create enough friction in the system, not to bring it to a grinding halt, but to lubricate and to create friction at the right level. And that's a fine balancing act, because you could over index everything around governance and nothing happens. Or you could be completely lax and everything goes wrong and then you have no checks and balances. So I think being able to find that real balance between how much of friction are you creating, but how much of lubrication you're creating in the system is important. So to answer the question very bluntly, I think methodology and then the governance attached to methodology is absolutely critical.
Thank you.
We know our community, but we don't know yours yet. Why not share the benefits of your UKISUG membership with those who don't know about us? The UKISUG referral scheme rewards you for helping to grow and develop our community. You can check out the link in the description to find out more about how you can get involved. Terms and conditions apply. We hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast.
Just reflecting back on what you said earlier in having the right partner and how important that is. What qualities matter most in a strong delivery partner, in your opinion?
I think one who supports and who aligns to your company's culture. And if you take an organization, a strong SI that is just, we'll tell you what to do, just stop asking us questions, we'll deliver it, and takes nobody on the journey. And there's lots of partners that's their motto and very successful in that. There's others that just tell me whatever you want and I'll do it. And there's versions of that as well. And there's versions where, and I think what we try to do is try and find a balance between, yes, I want you to tell me what to do because you're the expert, but also at the same time, I want you to be respectful of the culture that we've got within Twinings Global Team. And to find that balance is hard. But I also think having an environment, and I think corporate culture-wise, that allows people to kind of bring that to the table is important. But I think if you, and I've seen, again, a number of programs that I've been talking to program directors on, is when you get the wrong mix between the SI culture and your corporate culture, you're set up for failure from day one, because you're in constant fight between two organizations that just don't coexist. So my advice to anybody is kind of starting this up from scratch. Understand your culture and be true to what your culture is. Understand what you want and what you don't want from an SI. Because whatever you choose, you're going to deal with the consequence of that time and time again. And it's really hard and very expensive to kind of get rid of SIs and so forth. So it's disruptive on every dimension. So spend the time up front to truly get to know you as a company, to say, is this who we really are? Because a lot of people would say things that because it sounds intellectually right. But when it gets down to the rubber hits the road around saying, this is who we are, knowing that and then being able to find an SI that reflects that and supports that is important. Because if you get your culture wrong, and I think a lot of programs that I've seen get the culture wrong. You get the cheapest vendor, well, sometimes you get what you pay for. Or you get a vendor that is really robust in what they do, is the methodologies and so forth. And that just kind of goes against around, but we're a free thinking organization and we want to explore and we want to sit and talk. And so, when those things don't align, problems occur.
I agree. I think there's a lot to be said, and you get what you pay for. But that alignment is crucial. You know, how you have to be able to work comfortably and confidently with any partner, and they're the same as you. I mean, you mentioned it in our previous discussion about them being, I think, you know, what I took from it anyways, they're part of your team. It's one team. We're working together on this, and we have to have that kind of relationship where we can work together successfully.
Absolutely, because again, if you don't create that one team culture, you're starting off saying, you're a supplier, I'm the vendor, or I'm the customer, and let's have that relationship. And again, a lot of successful implementations have that. For me, what I wanted to try to drive is around, that is not the outcome. I really wanted to try to get an outcome where we were all winning together or we failed together. It's as simple as that.
Thank you. What route did you take with your transformation? Was it greenfield, brownfield, bluefield?
Yeah, so somebody's going to come up with a new color scheme just now. For us, it was greenfield. So I was fortunate enough to be able to have a largely a blank piece of paper to say, well, this is how we're going to run the organization going forward, which made life easier on a number of dimensions. So for us, that was really, really important. But what we were not going to do is to bring on any of the bad habits and bad processes and so forth. So greenfield from day one, this is what we want to do, this is how we want to do it, and we delivered against that.
Thank you. And what guidance would you give organisations trying to justify investment in large transformation initiatives?
Comes back to, again, sounds like a broken record. Why are you doing it? If you want to do it for a technical upgrade, be brave enough to say that's what it is and there's no business case behind it, which is fine. I mean, lots of companies, that is a path that they need to follow. How quickly can you get to that new version of SAP would be part of that conversation. If you truly want to transform, then be brave enough to say what you're transforming. Because again, like I said, these words roll off the tongue. It sounds really cool when you say it and makes all the nice news headlines. But truly, what are you trying to achieve? Because when you start doing that and people can see that and people want to live that, then it's a lot easier to have this debate around, but hold on, is this really transformation? We use this concept around, is it delivering wow? And a lot of times we would say, well, listen, is that a wow moment or not? And just doing what we did was wow in itself. But every one of those micro decisions, if you pause and ask yourself a question, is it really doing something better? If the answer is no, then why do it? So I think starting on the transformation journey to say, I'm doing this for this reason, sets the tone for every decision thereafter. Because you're going to be making decisions around cost, you're going to make decisions on quality, and you're going to make a decision around time. And what are you going to use when that problem comes up as being your North Star? Now, is it, well, no, today it's all about cost. No, tomorrow it's about quality. No, tomorrow, being able to know I've got a clear set of principles that I'm applying to on a consistent basis is really important.
Thank you. And so you've talked about understanding the why. You know, what's the purpose of what we're looking to do here? You've talked about alignment. Use the boat analogy. You know, are we all on the boat, or are you off the boat? So how do we make the boat go faster towards our North Star, if you like, our heading? So, in your experience, are there any other areas of how business and IT should collaborate to drive that transformation effectively on top of what we've already discussed?
Again, I think to help your business stakeholders to understand the art of the possible. Because let's be honest, their job is not to understand IT. The job is to make more, sell more, deliver more, and delight the consumer. That's why they exist. So the question you got to ask yourselves is around how are you facilitating that? Not what's your IT agenda. How, when you are talking to a marketing person, how do you close the gap between, you know, all the tech stuff, but you want them to understand how that tech is going to accelerate marketing? You're sitting with supply chain and saying, well, listen, how is this tool going to help my planning or my production without you talking about the underlying tool set? When you start bridging the gap from a perspective of this is not a tech conversation, this is a business problem, and you as the person that they trust you to understand, can you translate what my problem is to the relevant tech solution? That's when magic starts happening. Problems occur when you have an agenda that is misaligned to the problem and you're force-fitting one or the other. It's always interesting how I find that people would say, you know, I'll show you how to run IT. I always turn around and say, and I'll show you how to do marketing. You know, so let's talk about our strengths. And I think it becomes confrontational when you want or the other. If you use a phrase that we use as part of our vision statement, which is co-create, then you're going to meet somebody halfway, and they're going to meet you halfway to be able to make sure that we want to work together. And that's where building relationships really matter. It's really easy on these programs not to focus on building relationships and knowing how you bring people on that journey. But being able to understand their problem and your problem and bring them together, and like I said, that's where the magic happens.
Thanks, Sandeep. And coming to a close now, I'll be loosening some thumb screws off you. What considerations come into play when scaling a transformation across multiple business units or geographies, and what do you think the case is like for the use of public cloud?
So for us, scale was important, both in terms of time, but also in terms of functionality. When we started our Optimus journey, public cloud was still very, very young in its capabilities. So I think it didn't. In fact, not. I think it definitely didn't meet our requirements at the point of time. I think public cloud has evolved massively since then. But it comes back to a very important question around the culture of the organization. If you believe the thing that you've got is your absolute competitive advantage, do you want to build that inside SAP, or do you want to build it somewhere else? And I think with things like BTP and on the SAP landscape, it's very easy to kind of say, I want to build stuff where it makes sense and I want to integrate it back to SAP. I think if you're clear around where you're going to draw the lines between truly what's your competitive advantage and where do you just want to do stuff, then I think public cloud has a massive place to play. But I think a lot of organizations kind of sit in that no man's land around saying, well, no, I want all this customization. And largely that's the differentiation. I want the customization and I want it in SAP versus I want the customization. Can you IT people can figure out where and how I get that? And then public cloud becomes a very, very easy solution. And for us, what we tried to do was to ensure that we want to deliver at pace is keep the core clean. Because as soon as you talk about customization, the timeline increases. So that was the first thing. The second thing was, how do we cluster our implementation? So we did, for our 2 waves, we actually ran them in parallel. So, which again was a different challenge altogether. But we tried to shorten the timeline. So the objective that I had was, how do I get this in as quickly as possible so it doesn't distract the business? The ultimate part of my business is to be able to again, sell more, make more, deliver more, and delight the consumer. If I didn't do that, didn't find a methodology or an approach that could accelerate that, we'd still be having conversation around how do we roll this out. So all of those things were kind of inputs in terms of saying, keep the core clean for this reason, ensure that the team is set up for that reason, ensure that we have the right scope for that reason, and that gave us the kind of momentum that we needed.
Thank you. Sandeep, thank you so much. Thank you for your time, for your insights, for answering the question of our attendees at Connect. I really do appreciate your time.
It's an absolute pleasure. And again, I said this a number of times. It is, in some small way, if I can help other organizations kind of learn from my mistakes and the lessons that we've had, and to make sure that you success, the entire industry is a better place. And I do this for one very simple reason, is that if we all, as an industry, can deliver these programs more successfully, it just helps us all. So that's my purpose with helping you guys out.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it valuable. Please make sure you do subscribe so you don't miss any of our future podcasts. And until the next time, stay safe, stay well, and start with why.